overall, so let's start from the big picture, art market grew or decreased in the last 5 years? Do you think it grew up or decreased? What do you think? Just like your answers in the chats. What is your expectations? We went through wars and a pandemic. Do you think the art market grew or decreased in the last 5 years? This is an open question to everybody, so please answer in the chat if you can. Nobody wants to answer. Okay, thank you, Samira. Decreased, okay. Anyone else? Grew, thank you, Fatma. Okay. All right. Let's have a look. Well, this is kind of stable. So from a global perspective, the art market was actually rather stable. And this is a projection over 10 years from 2009 up to 2022. So it's a rather big picture where you can see that the global art market was pretty stable. And, it was a kind of interesting decade as we went through lots of wars and, of course, the pandemic. But nevertheless, we shall say that just like 2020, of course, the pandemic, and 2009, because of the economic crash that was globally hitting different markets, overall, we can actually agree that this decade was rather stable from a market perspective. I have, however, a question. Do you think the art market in the Middle East this time grew or decreased in the last 5 years? What do you think? So we talked about the globe. Let's now talk about the Middle East as a region. What do you think is the takeout? Decreased. Thank you, Amir. Thank you. Decreased. Thanks, Amira. Grew. Thank you, Fatma. Okay. So the most positive is Fatma, isn't she? Oh, yeah, isn't she? Okay, let's have a look. Well, this is a kind of a benchmark I created where I benchmarked the Middle East against the world. And I just took those segments because the graph on the left is actually starting from the year 2000, whereas this kind of a line, the green line, is basically the same time-wise on both graphs, okay? Well, you see that basically the Middle East and the world are rather harmonious. So there's not a big difference between what is happening in the world as a great picture and what is happening in the Middle East. So when we think of a kind of a disjoint situation, that is actually not the truth. The Middle East is very much connected with the global affairs, even when it comes to the global art market. The only difference being 2012. That was the kind of a year that is a difference, but it's kind of a physiological of the market. Watch out, because in 2017, Iran started having sanctions. Of course, different versions and at times sanctions have applied upon the country. But 2017 is kind of interesting because new sanctions are being applied onto the market of Iran. But nevertheless, overall, global market and Middle Eastern art market are more or less transposable and harmonious. Let's go ahead. What about Iran? Do you think that the sanction improved or weakened the Iranian art market? This is very interesting, I think. So what do you think happened upon sanctions? It grew or weakened? I'm really curious to hear what you believe. Do you think it improved or not really? Weakened, okay. Okay. Amir, weakened, thank you. Okay, let me show you what the actual answers are. Thank you, Siamak. Well, this is 2018, so it's basically the actual start of the presidency of Donald Trump, who actually promoted a very heavy mass of sanctions upon the country, and it was kind of law. But look at 2023, so it's really actually going well. And consider that the country has to recover from a situation of debilitation. So despite sanctions, despite a kind of a still market and the stagnation that the sanctions promoted, well, actually, the Iranian market is really promising. There are other countries in other areas, also in the Western world, that are not being as competitive. So the performance of Iran over these 5 years' time is very promising and very positive indeed. So this is a kind of a good news. Congratulations, Iranian friends. This is a great, great, great piece of information. The Iranian market is performing well. It's at least in the last 5 years. Now, if you look, though, at the international bibliography, so all the bulletins, the newspapers, the magazines that talk about Iranian art, well, there is a big bias. I did a research myself on the Art Basel, that is like one of the world's most regarded, looked upon resources and sources about the art market. And if you type Middle East in this research, there's only one finding. So this means that the Middle East is not present in the international consideration of the art market in the first place. And this generates problems, the kind of the non-full understanding of how the global art market works, and biases. You cannot talk about, in a huge global bulletin about art market, you cannot dismiss this very meaningful idea. And I will talk about this bias also in another case study. The case study we'd like to talk about has been raised by Artnet News, that is one of the most promising newspapers on the art market, that titles, "Does the market only pay attention to art from the Middle East during times of conflict?" This is a case by Al-Sudani, an Iraqi artist, and I would like to show you how the pricing of these artists has differentiated across time, depending on the actual momentum of war that he was experiencing as an artist. In 2008, when Iraq was actually in the middle of the global stage, there was a momentum for the Iraqi art. Well, his artwork would sell for more than 1 million. In 2015, after 7 years, so the momentum of Iraqi war basically weakened, and so did the price, $87,000. And today, 2020, that would be $2,000. So you see that these artists, these Iraqi artists, really experience the bias that the Western world promotes toward these kind of artists from these areas, as they're really willing to buy in moment of crisis and in war times. So the closer they are to war, the higher the price. This is a kind of an interesting kind of a correlation and dichotomy we need to keep in mind when we talk about Middle Eastern art. So there is this kind of appreciation of war for some reason that is rather scary, I have to confess. Now, let's have a critical look at the Middle Eastern art market before the transition of the, taxation that were heavily put upon the market. So this is basically 2030, the segmentation of the different countries that make up the Middle Eastern area, okay? And they were performing rather well. And even Iran, if you see, I can't really zoom. Oh, I can zoom, yes. Hopefully you can see. Yeah, so you can see that Iran was even above actually the region. So there was the Middle Eastern Art Index, the performance, from 2007, 2013, so before sanctions were heavily applied upon the country. And Iran is basically this purplish line here that was much above all the time, across time, and more above the region. So it was a consistent market. And if you make the benchmark here, just like ignore Egypt for one moment, there was just the momentum, the explosion of Egyptian art. But nonetheless, Iran is very consistent. It's really just on top if you take both times. So Iran was really performing well back in 2013, so 10 years ago. And this is kind of interesting also, because if you segment the nationalities of the top 1,000 contemporary artists in the region, Iran is the only country that has a representation. So Iran really was going well back in the 2010s, it was really going well. And in fact, counted 8 artists as much as Spain or Switzerland, that are very leading countries in the contemporary market. So, pretty good health for the country being back in these years. However, sanctions. This is a kind of a benchmark of the US dollars against the rial, basically the Iranian currency. And as you can see, even though you experienced yourself, so there's no need for me to say anything, the sanctions really applied heavily. okay, on the market. And let me tell you something that's kind of interesting. So this is the auctions in the Arabian Peninsula. I know that you do not belong to the Middle East. It's a kind of a geographical ascription that the West imposed, more or less. But nevertheless, you see that as soon as Iran was sanctioned, the whole area suffered from it. So the whole Arab market, the whole Middle Eastern market suffered from the sanctions imposed upon Iran. So I don't know if you know the butterfly effect. You know, it's like this kind of idea that even though the butterfly is a tiny insect, when it does, use the wings, and she generates a little wind. In any case, she does generates problem for the whole area. Even though it's a tiny insect, the reverberation is rather big. And here you see how much Iran is having an impact on the global market of this specific area. So Iran does matter to the region. There is not really Iran or Dubai, actually. There is not actually Dubai without Iran, to be honest. And this is actually a proof of that. Unsurprisingly, I was kind of surprised myself, to be honest. Iran showed incredible resilience. So even though there was international tension, bigoting, and sanctions, Iran really was exposed with resilience, responded with great strength and courage. You should be all proud of as Iranian people. And I would like to show you how amazing the activity was. These are some of the most important galleries in Tehran, so the capital of your country. And you will see that despite the sanctions, in 12 years, the number of activities actually improved, okay? And the intangible scores, so the quality, the productivity actually skyrocketed. It was really interesting. So sanctions, the currency actually dropped, but nevertheless, it was really highly performing. So this is the number of galleries. And there are certain European galleries that actually shut down, okay? So we had the opposite effects in a country that was not being imposed sanctions. And this is a kind also of an interesting comparison between Tehran and Dubai. Even though Dubai is considered to be the capital in the area, in the region, you see that the confrontation between Tehran and Dubai is rather strict. The point is, Dubai doesn't have any sanction or restrictions, but in any case, Tehran keeps up. So this tells you a lot about the resilience and the strength of the Iranian people and the Iranian art market system. This is a very interesting finding, So of course, Dubai was benefiting from the best moment, Westerners going and buying, no taxation, the fiscalization was light, not heavy, but nonetheless, Iran resisted. It really showed lots of resilience despite all the sanctions. So this is I think really generates lots of pride and lots of, I think of sense of a national pride for you, should actually do. And this is the evolution of sale for Iranian artists. And once again, so we went from the big picture, so how Iran is actually communicating to the greater area of the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula, how it was titled. But here there is a kind of a focus upon artists, and even single artists, individual artists, that were keeping up with the market despite sanctions, despite anything. So it was really being a great momentum. Resilience. The key word for me is resilience. This is really the great finding to me. And I want to make the case study of Sohrab Seper. I'm sorry for the pronunciation, and this is the kind of a list of the top 10 Hammer Prize for Iran national artists. So you see that we're talking about artists who generate more than millions in the auction. So it's a real great market. And they mostly sell in Dubai, there's this Tehran auction, and in London also Sotheby's. So there is a kind of international reverberation as well. And if you see Sohrab Seperi, you see, so it's kind of interesting here. I kind of made a comparison with Jenny Saville. She's one of the British artists of the group of the YBA, and Maurizio Cattelan is an Italian artist, very famous for contemporary art. And you see that we're talking about very different artists, but look at this Iranian artist. He has a very consistent and loyal collector, meaning that despite all the fluctuations over time, he really kept a consistent, organic market. We cannot tell the same about Jenny Saville and Maurizio Cattelan. They really have big market, but very fluctuating. So these top Iranian artists, while benchmarked to either a British or an Italian artist, actually the performance can be told to be much better, can't it? And we're talking about a progression of 10 years, so it's consistent monitoring of these artists. So good, Iran, very good actually. So to conclude, I'm almost about, I'm towards the end. I wanted to say that not only the art market is growing, but also the digital art market. Unfortunately, I couldn't find lots of data. This was so disappointing, to be honest. But in any case, I tried to do my best. And I generated a primary source to understand what is the digital life in the country. And I benchmarked Iran against Dubai to see like what is the research trend for NFT. And in Iran is very much alive indeed. So this might imply that the people are making a culture, might be investing, might be open to welcome a next future of NFT and digital art for these artists. Much better than Dubai. So Iran keeps being really ahead of the capital of the art market being Dubai in the region, despite all the biases in the bibliography. Nevertheless, I don't know if you knew that the two major platforms for digital art being OpenSea and MetaMask, these are the two most important platforms for digital art, they banned Iranian artists. So it was being a prolific activity, but nevertheless, there was this kind of bad note. And this is what is the projection of NFTs in Iran in the next years. And you see there's a kind of interesting momentum that is projected in the next 5 years. So really Iran can become, because sanctions and limitations, of course, they limit the freedom to circulate and liquidity and the possibility to make transactions inward and outward in the art market. But nevertheless, look how amazing the projection is. So Iran, despite physical limitations, can really skyrocket in the future and become a hub for digital art in the future. Who knows? The projection is positive. So in a nutshell, the global and Middle Eastern art markets can be variably considered riding communication and harmonious. So those who say that Iran is out of the global art market, it's not correct. Iran and the global art market are really being kind of head to head. They're walking head to head, hand in hand. And the Iranian art market, despite sanctions, let's not forget, it's not like a regular situation for the market. It's actually going well. It's improving. From 2018 to 2023, the market is indeed improving. There is a bias in the bibliography and the international research. Nobody actually talks about the potential of this country. And when you type in Middle East in this research, that is like very referential indeed, there is just one finding, which is not really amazing, honestly. Before and prior to sanction, Iran was performing much better than other countries in the same region. So Iran really had a leading position prior to sanctions. And then it was so meaningful to the whole area that as soon as the country was experiencing the drop, what happened, unfortunately, was that the whole area had to basically respond to these sanctions. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? So Iran does give lymph and energy to the whole area. There is not really a Middle Eastern market without Iran. This is a very great statement, which I think we should keep in mind. And then the key word I would like to leave you with is that Iran is resilient. Despite sanctions, despite problems, limitation, bigotry, and all the factors that determined this moment of opaque growth for the country, Iran is keeping up. And we should be all proud of your country from this point of view. Very much resilient indeed. And Iran is really the future. Iran can be one of those geographies where new digital technologies can actually skyrocket. It's like a very vivid country in terms of artistic creativity. And digital art, which doesn't know any limits, because you can really propose your art regardless of limitation, can really be the future for your country. And I have the last one. I kind of made the thank you. I don't know how to pronounce, unfortunately, but thank you so much. Thank you. I don't know if you've got questions. Thank you, Samira. check it out. I actually have a question to you. Do you, because when I asked these questions, I realized that there was a kind of a negativity towards the country. So maybe as Iranians yourselves, you think you're in a context which is not being prolific and active. So what is your self-perception of the country when it comes to the art market? Do you think it's being is going towards the on the right track, or it's kind of experiencing a momentum of negativity? Because data is different. The data tells you the country is strong, resilient, used to be leading, and can really be promisingly so in the future. But what is your expectation and your own experience as Iranians? Are you aware of the great country it can turn out to be in terms of the art, or not really? Right. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for the question. And I shall confess I'm not a music expert, but nonetheless, I've been studying 3.0 culture, so being also artificial intelligence for years now, and my publications are really dedicated to the realm of the technology. I always try to make this metaphor. I don't know if you remember what happened the first time a movie was projected. So it was in France, and I will try to make this kind of a flashback to contextualize a bit how artificial intelligence might work and what might be the consequences after that. So if you remember, the first movie that was projected in France consisted of a train that was being projected onto a wall, and it was running, running, running. The people were not experienced of what a film was like. So they just thought, oh my God, the train is going to come towards me. I'm going to die. So everybody left the room because they thought, this is technology I don't understand. The same applies to photography. When people were firstly photographed, they thought their soul was being captured. But today, look at movies. We like to be immersed in trade, we like immersive movies, and we like photography so much that it's on our phones, it's here. We're learning via cameras. So the artificial intelligence today is being demonized, and there is this kind of antagonism, human and actors, whereby those things that are made by artificial intelligence will replace humans. Well, I don't think that's the truth. I don't think that even though there is movies, there's no new jobs. There are film directors, actors. Even though there is photography, there are new photographers and artists. Artificial intelligence will actually celebrate more human creativity, because things created by humans will be by nature different by those created by artificial intelligence. They might be more imperfect, so maybe in the future we will like imperfections. Maybe in the future we will celebrate imperfection and mistakes more. Think of art. It used to be so faithful and so true to nature. Nowadays there is abstractism because there's photography that takes portraits, so there's no need to do that. So human beings created new genres, new types, new ways, new school of thinking. So I think artificial intelligence is not going against human creativity. And it will not make discovery of new artists more difficult, but actually more celebrated. Because human beings will really try to go the extra mile to create something new that machines will never be able to create. So I think it's not one versus, but actually one that improves and celebrates human beings, and even, unfortunately, their mistakes. Because I think we got this condemnation of what mistakes are, problems are, but they're so beautiful. They're mistaking, it's such a beautiful human creativity, I think. Problems are beautiful creativity. So today, machines are actually cutting those out. But maybe in the future, mistakes will become distinctive traits that were made by human beings. So they will be beautiful. Okay, Fatima. Yeah, thank you. It used to be more, unfortunately. If you look at the major capitals in the world, like New York, Dubai, and so on and so forth, the Middle East was regarded as like the weak. You had the Middle Eastern weak. You do have departments with specialists that just specialize in those arts. There's still a market, but unfortunately, the fluctuation has been rather big. So there's now a concentration on regional markets. Europeans tend to buy European art. Chinese are just really focused on traditional Chinese art. And there is an internal market in the Middle East, but it's not as big as other markets. So it used to be an asset also for foreigners, but it's become more so for domestic markets. Okay, I think this will change over time. If we really talk about war and attractiveness and fortune of the art markets, I think Palestine can be the new trend. This is so sad, but if I have to interpret the data, that's basically a truth, one truth. Okay. And then, the market is fluctuating all the time. I think Iran will really skyrocket. And Iranian artists, internationally speaking, do have a name, do have a reputation, do have a market. And this is data. So I think Iranian are setting the prestige and the interest abroad, not really in the internal market. Even though, as you saw, galleries are really being prolific in the country, and they're skyrocketing anyways, despite sanctions. So they still create an asset, an interest, a magnetism, but cancel me think that is not the greatest time. I think it will come back to appeal. This country was cheap to buy from, well, people would come. Think of Dubai. It's very kind of interesting because you can buy fiscally in hubs like Singapore or Hong Kong for 0%. If you buy import-export art in these hubs, that would be just 0%. So if Iran had very easy kind of policies of import-export, Iran could become a hub. It's such a strategic country, geographically speaking. It's really between like the east and the west and the south and the north of the world. So if that accounted as like a country where fiscality was beneficial, well, Iran could really skyrocket further. How is the Middle East market pursued? Okay, I hope I answered your question, Fatma. I really hope. Otherwise, just like extend more questions and it will take time to answer. Samira, I will be very happy if we can know the references. Yeah, I can send you an email with all the references if you want to, and I think Amir can mediate between the two of us, no problems. What fields of art was the presentation of? Visual arts. If you're talking about what category it mostly focused on, is visual arts. Yeah. Thank you, Mirsad. Thank you. Thank you so much. And please be proud of your country, because it really proved to be a strong, resilient country despite all the sanctions. So this is my really goodbye message. I'm very honored to be here and to give you back pieces of information about a country that has been very resilient and you should be all proud of. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Bye.